What were your experiences in 2021 with this?
Our ghostly adventures were inspired by the fact that we live in a historic home in Chelmsford, Massachusetts. Our home was built in 1752, and it just has a lot of history to it. It's 260 something years of history, and I think it was a home for Revolutionary War soldiers at one point. And we had some interesting experiences when we first moved in within that first year.
This is something you've personally been interested in all your life, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I've always been interested in the supernatural, paranormal occurrences, all that jazz. Wasn't until we moved into this house that I, actually had some interesting experiences.
So there was some of them were personal though too, right?
Yeah, so my feeling is if anything that we experienced in the first 6 months or so that we were living here, if any of that really was supernatural or, just can't be explained by anything, reasonable or scientific, then my uncle had passed away the same time that we moved in, and
Yeah.
I was made executor to his will. And he was estranged from my dad, and up until right before he passed away, he was estranged from my brother. And never told me that he was going to make me executor, and it was a surprise. And then all of a sudden, he died in China, and I'm dealing with a bunch of people who I don't know. And I really didn't want the executorship. I didn't want to do this. I wasn't feeling well at the time. I really wasn't feeling up to all the responsibility that came with it. And again, it came at me from out of the blue. So what I ended up doing was kind of having a talk out loud with my uncle, just in the off chance that maybe he was trying to communicate with me, with unsettled, unfinished business. I'll never know what all that was about, but we had a lot of weird experiences
Well,
that
well, you name a couple. So was it kind of like, feeling his presence?
I don't know if it was feeling his presence as much as just feeling a presence. There was a lot of tactile sensations where I would feel touching sensations on my arm and, body, different parts of my body, legs. And when I would put my daughter to sleep, I'd lie down next to her bed on the floor. She always wanted somebody to lull her to sleep. So we
Yeah.
called it my nest. It was just a mattress on the floor next to her bed. And sometimes I'd fall asleep in there or just wait until she went to sleep, and I'd just roll over and just get comfortable. And a bunch of times when I would roll over on my side, I'd feel somebody poking at me, like trying to get my attention.
Huh.
I thought it was my daughter, and then I'd turn around. She'd be clear on the other side of her bed. There was no way that she was doing it, or she'd be asleep.
Wow.
And then I'd run in, just about every night, like clockwork, run into the master bedroom where my husband was, and where Ken was, and complain to him that it was happening again. And I'd get really freaked out. But every night I'd do the same routine. I needed to get her to go to bed. We'd have a touch lamp in her room that we'd turn off. Ken would say goodnight to both of us, and then the touch lamp would come on.
Wow.
But within about 30 seconds or so, 30 to 45 seconds, every single night, again, like clockwork, it would just turn on. And then Emily and I would kind of laugh and yell out to Ken and say, it's on again. Then he'd come in and he'd turn it off. And then it wouldn't come on. It would never come on during the day by itself.
I've had some experiences lately too, and with me, I lost my mom to COVID last year, and I've been seeing her in dreams. And the strangest thing is that her presence, it doesn't look like her, but it is her.
Mm-hmm.
And it's bizarre. I didn't dream for a long time about it. And so I think it's kind of her kind of coming into like a dimension to visit me, And these are the experiences. Now, you guys have been going to a lot of very old cemeteries in New England, and we're known in the New England area for all the, like you were saying, the Revolutionary War. A lot of people were buried, and
Yeah, this experience that we had in our home, it inspired us to make our first video. And we have a little video on everything I just told you. There's been a lot Indian battles and massacres all over the place. A lot of these cemeteries we're finding out are the home of, where some Indian battle or massacre had occurred. And like there's one in Nashua, couple that we went to, but one in particular called Gilson Road Cemetery.
Oh, Nashua, New Hampshire, yeah.
There was supposedly some crazy medicine man that was running around that, I don't know, might be haunting the area. It's got a lot of legends attached to it. Over in other areas, over by Wachusett Mountain, there's the legend of Lucy Keys, a little girl who vanished.
You're filming this, you're videotaping this and taking pictures and all that?
We'll read up on different places in the area here that's within driving distance that has a reputation for being haunted, or there's a legend or some kind of interesting story attached to it. And then we'll go out to that particular place. Usually it's a cemetery. There's like a haunted boat in Quincy that we want to check out. We're not just confined to cemeteries, but we definitely have a lot around here.
There's a lot of episodes coming up in 2022, huh?
I hope so.
I hope so. Your viewers are hoping so too. This is very cool stuff.
What we have been experiencing the most of is something called pareidolia.
What is that?
It means that something, an inanimate object, takes the form of like a person or an animal or something that's living. It just takes on the form of something that is like a natural occurrence, a natural formation, but it's taking on the shape and the image of like a face or, a person. Or we've seen some things that we really can't explain that are pretty much unbelievable, except we've seen it. We've gone to these places. We've taken photos, a couple of graveyards that I'm thinking of where we took photos and only afterwards found these strange images. One was a sunlit pattern.
Describe some of them.
At Gilson Road Cemetery, there's a sunlit pattern on a tree that looks just like a skull, or it could be a face. It has high cheekbones, so it could be an Indian person. On this tree, we see what looks like a face. And then above that face, it looks like there's like a pumpkin or a jack-o'-lantern.
I'm getting the chills just thinking about it.
Then to the left of the face and what looks like a pumpkin or a jack-o'-lantern is what looks like another face, like a grimacing face. It looks like spirits in the trees. This tree was far away behind Ken. He was walking, and I just noticed a bright spot in the photo. Again, we take a bunch of photos and then we just look for weird things, and that's exactly what we found. I zoomed in on this tree and I'm like, oh my God, it looks like a face. And at first I didn't even notice the other faces until other people had pointed them out. The weirdest one that we've seen so far, it was at North Cemetery. That's near Wachusett Mountain. It's I think it's Princeton, Massachusetts. I was on a hill and I was just taking random photos of gravestones. It's a pretty old graveyard. I think some of the gravestones are from like the 1700s as well as the 1800s. I don't know what possessed me to do this, but I guess I kind of habitually zoom in on all these pictures. But there was this one photo, and it just looks like a bunch of gravestones. And something possessed me to zoom in on these gravestones, even though at first glance it didn't look like there was anything special. It just looked like a bunch of gravestones. I zoomed in, and I saw what looked like the portrait of a woman. It looked so much like the portrait of a woman that I was convinced that it was a portrait. I told Ken, I was like, we've got to go back there. I want to see this. Nowadays, modern graves, we have one right down the road in Hart Pond Cemetery. That's right down the road from where we live. You'll see photos or etchings or portraits of people, but those are modern. You don't have anything like that on a gravestone from the 17 or 1800s.
Now, this is just my curiosity. Do you think that there's any correlation between like different positions of the moon or different times of the year?
When you're more likely to experience something paranormal?
Yeah, I mean, just in my curiosity, is there a specific time, or every time you do go, do you get something out of it?
I wouldn't say every time, but I'd say most times.
Most times, yeah.
We've not walked away empty-handed. We did go to Hart Pond Cemetery on Halloween night, which is, again, the cemetery right down the road. And it was dark. We just decided to have some fun and just take random photos. We caught these two images. One, you could say it's an orb, but it looks like a face with long like white hair, like in a robe or something. But and then in that same photo where this bright orb is behind a gravestone, to the left of it, if you zoom in, it looks like a woman, a silhouette, a transparent silhouette of a woman leaning back on a gravestone. You can make out what looks like a frock, like a pilgrim's dress, where there's like an apron or a frock, and then you can see the rest of the dress. You can make out where her arm is bent. You can see her elbow. You can see her legs, and then you can see her head. I mean, not everybody can see this, but a lot of people can. Some people look at it and just say, I just see a gravestone. And Ken and I are looking at it. We're like, how can you not see this person? Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's just the fact that it's there. It's there along with an orb that's a distance away from it, but they both were captured in the same photo.
Are these captured in any kind of flash or anything like that, or do you do it different ways?
That's the thing. We use I use my iPhone camera, and I use the flash. And in the back of these images, you can see a car with headlights. So my flash may have caught the flash of the lights, the headlights in the car. My flash may have caught those lights, and it may have caused these artifacts. But like Ken keeps saying, just the fact that we're seeing what we're seeing, even if it's an artifact, it's really cool and it's really weird. I mean, obviously we would want to believe that it is something supernatural.
Maybe there is kind of a communication.
That was Halloween night, though. Halloween night is the night before All Saints Day. That is the night when supposedly the veil between the living and the dead is at its thinnest, and it's the easiest for the living to communicate with the dead and vice versa. The thing is, though, we did go back to Hart Pond Cemetery another night, maybe a week or two later, with some friends. My daughter was taking pictures, just like I was taking pictures. She was taking pictures with her iPhone. She caught what looked like fog, even though it was not a foggy night. A lot of hers picked up what looked like mist. She caught what looked like these very thin streams of fog or lines that looked like almost like smoke or fog. She kept catching that type of image. On my iPhone, I kept catching what looked like transparent columns. Some of them were bent, some of them were straight, some of them were shooting across the sky. Some of them were going horizontal. Some of them were vertical. One of them was bent. It looked like it was going both ways. And that was a different night. That was not Halloween night, but that was the same cemetery. So the question is, are the iPhones just picking up artifacts that are due to the iPhones? We also caught orbs. That was the other thing, different colored orbs.
Seems to me like they're kind of used as like a conductor.
Yeah, like supposedly different colored orbs have different symbolism, are indicative of different types of moods or frequencies. So we caught one, it's a red circle. It's right in front of a gravestone. Doesn't look like any kind of street lamp or far away distant light from a house or any of that. It's right in front of a gravestone. There were a few others that were purple. So supposedly a red orb is indicative of a high frequency, a high vibrating frequency.
So it's like a hue, like clairvoyant people can see hues around people, can tell if they're good or bad and all that. And wow.
Yeah, and then the purple ones, that's supposedly more indicative of tranquility and peacefulness. A blue orb will be also interpreted as like a protective spirit. We saw purple and red. And then we saw the columns, and then we saw what my daughter picked up, these streaks of light or these streaks of fog or something that was really shooting across the ground. One looked like it looked like it could have been a tree branch, but it wasn't. You can see it. It was translucent, or it looked like fog. It didn't look like something solid. So we had those images from Hart Pond Cemetery. That cemetery might have a lot of activity, or it's possible that our iPhones have a lot of artifacts associated with the flashes. I don't know. We had a couple of interesting experiences, even with my father passing, where I got the feeling maybe he was trying to communicate, with us somehow. There was a flash of light in my mother's room. Then she said she's never seen that before. That was the night after he died. And I got very upset. I was like 3 o'clock in the morning, I remember, and I was just sobbing uncontrollably. I went to sleep, tried to go to sleep in my father's room. He and my mom slept in different rooms because he was very sick with Parkinson's and he needed his space and my mother needed her sleep. So she was in her bedroom. He was in a room like right down the hall. My husband and I decided to try to sleep in his bed that night, and I woke up. I was crying and my mother was awake. And it reminded me of the movie Terms of Endearment because I just kind of crawled into her bed and we were just trying to console each other. And while we were together trying to console each other, we saw this flash of light. And then in the hallway, there was a night light that flickered. And my mother said that never flickers. And the whole time I was there, I was watching it pretty closely whenever I could, and it did not flicker after that one time. So she and I took that as maybe a sign that, my dad was trying to communicate.
Those are the things, and that they give you goosebumps, in a haunting way. It is still peace, I get kind of freaked out about all this.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff creeps into my writing. I've published a few things. I always thinking about the possibility of some kind of afterlife or our loved ones going to a different dimension, but us maybe being able to see our loved ones again. I find the history of Halloween also very interesting, and the beliefs, that people had, like praying for people's souls to get out of purgatory, and little beggar children in England would pray for people's souls in exchange for soul cakes. And that was like the original trick-or-treating, the original exchange. Soul cake, cinnamon cake, that little kids would have, in exchange for praying for people's souls. And All Saints Day, and Samhain, which was the original name for Halloween. That actually has some relevance to one of our cemetery visits. It was a Samhain family that was buried where I saw this, what looked like a portrait of a woman. What looked like a portrait of a woman was on the back of the gravestone of a 10-month-old that had died. The child's name was Laura, but she was part of the Samhain family, Sawin. I thought that was, Ken just pointed that out, and I told him I already knew that. I already kind of made the connection. I do believe that the people that have passed on may be trying to communicate with the living, especially if there's some kind of unfinished business.
If there's some kind of door that's open.
This portrait-like thing with this woman, it's a silhouette of a woman, but you can see very clearly her features, her cheeks, her nose, her eyes, her neck, her clothing. You can see it.